Hello and welcome to another stroll along the way. Throughout the series we've seen the island in all sorts of guises, from the burgeoning early spring with the delicate fronds of green and the tints of primrose peeping through, to high summer with blue skies, azure seas and the exuberance of the holiday makers on the beach. And we're now coming to the season of mists and mellow fruitfulness. The area that we're walking in today, it has about 1,000 years of history behind it, and the mellow ancient stone combines very favourably with the rosy red bricks, and it marries quite well with some of the more modern buildings that stretch along its main street. I'm talking of a place called Edrington, which was mentioned in 880, and it means the estate of a man called Edher. In other words, the village of Arraton. Well, as I said, the first mention of Arraton was in 880, and it was left in 899 by King Alfred to his son Ethelwerd. Now, it's presumed that this is of Anglo-Saxon origin, in fact, and if you look at the far end of the church, the eastern section, you will see that it's a little unit on its own, and if you look carefully you can see the old Anglo-Saxon window, and if you were to go in you could see even more. So it's of Anglo-Saxon origin, it's thought. After Alfred, the manor as such was owned by Edward the Confessor, presumably then by Earl Harold, who became King Harold, and then of course we have the Norman Conquest in 1066, and the whole island was handed over to William Fitz-Osborne. He promptly awarded 6 of the island churches to his Abbey of Lyra that he'd formed in 1046. One of those 6 was Arraton Church. All well and good, but he died in 1071. His son inherited, Roger de Bretel, committed treason, and so the whole island property was taken back into the hands of the crown. During that time, however, Lyra was still taking its dues from the church tithes. And it is mentioned in the Domesday Book that the Abbey of Lyra held the church of this manor with a vergate of land, that's about 30 acres, a meadow of 1 acre, and all the tithes of the manor, which were assessed to be 20 shillings. In about 1100, Henry I awarded the island lordship, i.e. the whole island, to the de Redivere family, Richard de Redivere, who supported him. Richard's greatest ambition, as it was with many of these Norman lords, was to endow a monastery. It was of social standing, and not only that, of course, it, they hoped, ensured their afterlife, that they would go automatically to heaven. Now, it was round about 1299 that the monks of Cor decided to extend this little church, and they added more aisles to it and added the squat tower that sits over the western door there. So the monks of Cor had it right up until 1536, when the monastery was dissolved. And then it passed to a fellow by the name of John Miles. Now, he'd actually been Sheriff of Southampton, very powerful man in his own right. And he had also had a finger in the pie with Cor, quite friendly with the last abbot, William Ripon. And I think he probably tried to give him some advice. I mean, financially it was too late for the abbey, it had run right down. So he was in a prime position to be able to choose good properties to buy up. or buy the leases of, he decided he would have the church here.
Did you say this was one of the earliest churches on the island then, originally?
The rear part
The original
probably is.
church.
It's one of the oldest.
Yeah,
Yes,
on the island.
yes, yeah. The other old churches that William Fitz Osborne did award, there was Arreton, Knighton, New Church, Carisbrook, Freshwater, and I can never remember the sixth one. It's escaped me at the moment. Then there were 2 or 3 others that were suspicious, like Whipping and Sharfleet. It is thought that possibly there were churches there.
Yeah, but they probably only wooden ones or something.
Well, they all would have been to start with, yeah. Usually built of large slabs of wood and stone. Yeah. Now this cottage here, a style house, that was built somewhere around about the late 16th, or early 17th century on the site of an older property, and it is thought that it was probably the church house. And the church houses were places that brewed church beer for the high days and holidays, and if you like were an early community centre and provided a place of, I suppose you could almost say, sanctuary for the poorer people in the village, but a place also where people could celebrate on special feast days. Okay? Right, well we'll take you up and have a look at the back end of the manor now.
Right then.
I've really stopped here rather briefly, although we can't see the manor, well only glimpses through the trees. You can't really talk of Arreton and the church without mentioning the manor, because this area, if you like, is the original old village. And the manor house is thought to be roughly Elizabethan, early Jacobean, but the east wing, this end, is 14th century, and it is built largely of Binstead and Ventnor limestone. So it was some of it was quarried from the quarries at Core Abbey, or the old Core Abbey. The west wing is 19th century, and right up until the dissolution of the monasteries, it was farmed rather than a manor. It was a farm, a rather large and important farm nevertheless, by stewards of Core Abbey. And then when Henry VIII decided that he would take over all Abbey lands and then lease them out, it was leased towards the end of the Abbey's life and his early part by the Lee family, who eventually took over North Court Manor at Shorewell. Charles I owned it, and he actually had to sell the manor to pay off debts. So he sold it to the City of London, who promptly sold it, and I love the name, Lavinius Bennet sold it to him, who in turn sold it to Lord Culpeper, whose daughter inherited and married into the Fairfax family, who I believe their family name was actually Martin, and descendants of Lord Culpeper stroke the Fairfaxes owned it right up until the early part of the 20th century. And then it's passed through various hands quite quickly since then. It was worth going to see, but unfortunately the new owners have decided to close it to the public, so we have lost yet another manor house that we can actually go and explore the insides of. It's haunted, supposedly. One of the Lees was anxious to take over his father's inheritance, and the old boy wouldn't die quick enough for him, so he done him in.
Oh.
And he was seen by his sister, who was going to tell on him. So he pushed her down the stairs, and ever since then she appears at the head of the stairs, dressed in blue, apparently another blue ghost. This was round about the 16th century. I've never seen it myself, but quite a lot of people have apparently.
Oh,
Yes.
great.
Yes, I mean, no good place can go without a ghost or two.
That's true.
Right, we've stopped at the top of the down here because, in fact, it belonged to the Manor of Arreton, and in fact, the whole grounds or estate of the Manor of Arreton stretched as far as Wootton Bridge in the north part of the island. If you can imagine going down Wootton High Street from Newport, the boundary of Arreton was on your right-hand side, with intrusions round almost to Wootton Church and where the Sloop Inn is. Now this down was known as Arreton Down or Berredoun in 1256, and that can mean either the down where the barley is grown, from Old English berre, B-E-R-E, or it could mean the down where the swines are kept, from Old English boer, B-O-E-R, with an accent over the O and the E. It was Core Abbey lands. They leased it out, and in fact were negotiating a lease in about 1535 with Richard Lee of Arreton Manor. Before, in fact, the contracts could be exchanged, the abbey was dissolved and then the lands were apportioned elsewhere. So it's got a fairly long history. It's a little bit sad that the day is really rather overcast because there is a superb panoramic view here. We can see as far south as St Catherine's Down, and on a really good day you can see Culver Cliffs and the White Cliffs of Tennyson Down. We're walking across the top of Arreton Down now towards a rather large hump which is a site of execution. It is actually one of the round barrows, possibly had multiple burials from Neolithic times right up until certainly Anglo-Saxons, and I think possibly something like 240 shards of pottery have been found from perhaps the Neolithic times through to Anglo-Saxon times. As I said, used as a site of execution, known locally as Michael Morey's Hump. Now, Michael Morey was a chap born in a little valley just to the west of us, a little hamlet, 2 or 3 houses called Sullens, born in 1673. By 1737, he'd been executed for the most heinous crime that any of us can imagine.